The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Newport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The scandal continues. Parliament continues to uncover more evidence of the shameful record of this Prime Minister and his Liberal government after 9 long years. Canadians are once again seeing that this Liberal government is not worth the corruption. It is deeply concerning to witness this Liberal government's covering up another scandal. Every day, Conservatives expose more of this Prime Minister's corruption. We bring forward important testimony and new evidence that this Liberal government has tried to hide from Canadians. It is because of this corrupt and potentially criminal behaviour that Conservatives must rise in this House to bring home the facts directly to Canadians. With so much going on, it's important to bring all Canadians up to speed on the deeply troubling situation that has paralysed Parliament. For weeks, this Prime Minister has defied the will of Parliament by refusing to produce documents ordered by this House of Commons. For weeks, Conservatives have demanded that this Prime Minister surrender this evidence so that parliamentarians can uncover the corruption that has seeped into another Liberal green slush fund, Sustainable Development Technology Canada, also known as SDTC. This is my second time rising in the House, and I will continue to rise as long as these Liberals refuse to hand over evidence to the RCMP. Conservatives will not allow this Prime Minister or his caucus to hide the truth that Canadians deserve. So how did we get here? Mr. Speaker, for those just tuning into this scandal, I'd like to take it to explain how Sustainable Development Technology Canada, or SDTC, started to rot. You see, according to the program's website, SDTC is a government-funded program that claims to help, and I quote, Canadian companies develop and deploy sustainable technologies by developing critical funding support at every stage of their journey, from seed to success, end quote. What the program's website doesn't tell Canadians is that SDTC program became corrupt when the Liberals made changes to the program's board of directors. In 2019, under the direction of the Liberals industry minister, new appointments were made to the SDTC board. The SDTC website history doesn't tell you that many of these appointees' own companies would soon be caught in conflicts of interest with the same funds they were responsible for handing out. The SDTC website doesn't tell you that Liberal insiders began to siphon funds into their own pockets and have been getting rich for years while the Prime Minister and his cabinet turned a blind eye. And how do we know this happened? Well, Mr. Speaker, in a tremendously brave manner, whistleblowers came forward to call out the corruption they saw working at SDTC. Without their honesty, the scandal may have never been uncovered. Thanks to these whistleblowers, the alarms started to sound on this Liberal government. The ensuing investigations would suggest that SDTC negligence was much more than just mismanagement of funds. I refer to investigations, plural, because both the Ethics Commissioner and the Auditor General have reported findings of greed and corruption that is allowed to thrive under this Liberals government's watch. Over the course of multiple investigations, including investigations by Conservatives in committees, it seems that Parliament has only scratched the surface of Liberals' corruption. What started as tens of thousands of Canadian tax dollars being quietly directed to Liberal insiders turned from hundreds of thousands, turned to millions, turned to tens of millions, turned to what is now hundreds of millions of dollars. Multiple investigations have revealed that through the Green Slush Fund, $390 million of funding was approved for projects that had extremely concerning conflicts. What the Auditor General found was truly disturbing. The Auditor General found evidence that the Liberals' Green Slush Fund handed out $58 million to projects without a promise the contribution agreement terms were met. Another $58 million to 10 projects that were deemed ineligible, as they, at times, could not prove an environmental benefit or were not developed green technology. And finally, $334 million in over 186 cases where SDTC board members held a conflict of interest. This shocking misdirection of funds by Liberal-appointed board members has opened the eyes of Canadians to the corruption that demands Parliament's full attention. I'm sure Canadians from my riding in Manitoba can think of many ways these hundreds of millions of dollars could have been used. Whether it's improving internet and cellular connectivity in rural and remote regions, or by investing in law enforcement to crack down on crime. Instead, Liberal insiders got rich in the name of fighting climate change, all under this Prime Minister and his minister's watch. But I am proud to say that upon discovering this gross negligence and potentially criminal acts, Conservatives stood firm and demanded a proper investigation take place. Conservatives voted to pass an order from this House of Commons to force the Liberals to hand over the documents involved in their green slush fund. We demanded that these documents be handed over to the RCMP so a proper investigation could take place. But surprise, surprise, Mr. Speaker, these Liberals who voted against the document production order also refused to release the documents to the House of Commons. This is undoubtedly a breach of parliamentary privilege, as the Speaker of the House of Commons has ruled. It is on the breach of privilege that my Conservative colleagues continue to rise today. Not only were the Liberals caught giving funds to their Liberal friends, the minister responsible was also exposed for handing out tax dollars to projects without guaranteeing the projects would do good for the environment. This proves, once again, that the Liberals are nothing more than fake environmentalists. The Liberals failed to manage this program, leading to $390 million going into the bank accounts of Liberal insiders. Some SDTC recipients had no requirement to meet the environmental goals set out in the fund, and others were not even eligible for the funding. This is not the first time we've seen the Liberals misleading Canadians about the environmental record. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the Liberals have proven to be fake environmentalists. In the Environment Committee, Conservatives have uncovered extreme negligence and an attempt to cover up by, you guessed it, this Liberal government and their Environment Minister. Evidence revealed at the Jasper wildfire investigation has proved the Liberals do not care about the environment and won't accept responsibility for the damage that their action caused. During the national tragedy this last July, a third of Jasper burned, resulting in nearly $1 billion in damage and leaving over 2,000 people homeless. The Environment Committee launched an investigation into the Jasper wildfire. What the Jasper wildfire investigation revealed was shocking. For years, the Liberals were warned by experts that the deadfall caused by an infestation of mountain pine beetles meant the forest was a tinderbox waiting to ignite. Instead of taking action, the Liberals ignored experts and played politics instead. An email obtained by the Jasper wildfire investigation revealed that senior officials in the Environment Minister's department were discussing cancelling prescribed burns months before the Jasper wildfires. And I quote, "At what point do we make the organizational decision to cancel prescribed burns in Western Canada? Quote, political perception may be more important than actual prescription windows," end quote. In fact, alarm bells rang for years under this Liberal government as local forestry experts raised concern with the forest mismanagement. In a similar situation to the one we are discussing today, whistleblowers came to the committee to speak the truth. The Jasper wildfire investigation heard from professional foresters who warned the Liberal government in 2017 that a devastating fire in Jasper was not a matter of if, but when. The same professional forester revealed, and I quote, "Nothing was done to address a landscape of beetle-killed trees to prevent the mega fire of July 22nd, 2024, end quote. And while the Liberals' radical environment minister falsely claimed that his department did everything they could to prevent the fires, Conservatives exposed the Liberals ignored warnings about Jasper for years. In fact, just like their Green Slush Fund, the Liberals are failing to cooperate with another investigation, the Jasper wildfire investigation. On October 9th, this Prime Minister appointed a minister responsible for Jasper's recovery. On that same day, Conservatives passed a motion calling for this minister to testify at the Jasper wildfire investigation. Mr. Speaker, that was 27 days ago. Despite this, the minister has gone into hiding. He does not want to come to committee where he will be held accountable. Canadians want to know what this minister is hiding from this committee. And why won't he show up to answer the people of Jasper who have lost their homes because of this Liberal government's inaction? This is just another example of Liberal cover-ups and corruption. And while the minister responsible for Jasper won't testify, Conservatives have continued this investigation on behalf of Canadians. Through the Jasper wildfire investigation also revealed that a Parks Canada employee who spoke out about the mismanagement in Jasper was fired under this government. The Jasper wildfire investigation also heard from professional forester Ken Hodges, who asked whether the inaction by this Liberal government could be considered criminal. Why does the question of criminality keep coming up under this government? The forestry experts submitted a brief written submission to the Jasper wildfire investigation and stated, and I quote, "Was the inaction by Parks, knowing the issue and concerns that created this catastrophe, a criminal act?" End quote. Canadians should be concerned by this question that shows once again how often this Liberal government's actions blur the lines between negligence and criminal behaviour. The Jasper wildfire investigation is ongoing as Conservatives continue to uncover powerful evidence that shows Liberals' negligence allowed Jasper to burn. Mr. Speaker, we have to hold this government accountable. This is precisely why the SDTC documents must be handed over to the RCMP so Canadians can understand just how corrupt this deal was and whether it was criminal. Canadians are rightfully wondering this. Mr. Speaker, to the millions of Canadians who are outraged to learn about this corrupt and potentially criminal use of Canadian tax dollars, I would direct them to yet another Liberal handout which has just been exposed. I refer to yet another flashy Liberal announcement earlier this September, this time for a project that the Prime Minister claimed would bring high-speed internet to Canadians. The Prime Minister claimed that his government signed a $2 billion deal with a company named of Telesat that would lead to, and I quote, "better and faster internet service, even in rural and remote northern regions." The Prime Minister went on to claim, and I quote, "Telesat Lightspeed will expand internet and 5G networks in communities across Canada with affordable high-speed broadband connectivity." The Prime Minister also said, and I quote, "The network will accelerate the federal government's work to connect all Canadians to high-speed internet by 2030, end quote. This Liberal government hands out tax dollars in another deal they claim will connect rural and remote Canadians. But guess what we just learned? There is zero commitment to connect any households with internet with this $2 billion. Zero. Nothing. Nada. None. I asked the government in a written question, and I quote, "What are the complete details of financial penalties, if any, for not connecting the number of households agreed to in the funding agreement?" End quote. This was the minister's response, who, by the way, was the same minister overseeing the Green Slush Fund. And I quote, The funding agreement does not include any commitment in regards to the number of households to be connected to high-speed internet, end quote. The minister went on to say, and I quote, "And so there are no associated financial penalties in this regard," end quote. Can you actually believe this, Mr. Speaker? It's a $2 billion joke. Canadians are being forced to pay $2 billion for a connectivity program that may not connect a single household. How can you expect to connect Canadians to high-speed internet when your contract doesn't even set a minimum number of households that must be connected? Was it laziness? Was it neglect? Was it corruption? It was probably all of the above, Mr. Speaker. And at the end of the day, it means Canadians won't receive the connectivity services they paid for, even though these services can mean the difference between life and death, especially in rural and remote regions. The news comes after last year's findings in the Auditor General's damning report of this Liberal government's discovering that over 1 million households in rural Canada and over half of the First Nations still don't have access to high-speed internet. It's becoming very clear that the Liberal measure success on how much tax dollars they spend instead of the results they achieve. It seems the Prime Minister has no problem sending money to his friends in big corporations and no expectation to receive anything in return for Canadians. It's no wonder that despite multi-billion-dollar deals, Canadians still aren't connected, especially in rural and remote areas. This is why Conservatives are fighting for taxpayers. Allowing these Liberals' phony deals to go unchecked means more out-of-control spending and the corruption that only harms Canadians. Canadians know they cannot trust this Prime Minister to get results. The only people better off after 9 years of this Prime Minister are Liberal insiders. Mr. Speaker, despite claiming in 2015 that his government would be, and I quote, open and transparent, Canadians only see corruption and cover-ups. The Prime Minister's corruption and scandals are becoming so damning that even members of his own caucus have lost faith in him. The Prime Minister is hoping that the Green Slush Fund scandal disappears, but Canadians won't let him get away with this. To all the outraged Canadians watching from home, there is a clear but unmistakable pattern to what you are seeing. While Conservatives continue to expose the truth by asking questions, there seems to be no end of Liberal scandals. Whether we look at past scandals like SNC Lavalin or the We Charity Arrive scam, to the ongoing investigations like the Jasper wildfire investigation or the $8 billion Net Zero Accelerator Fund, every day new scandals are coming to light, just like their $2 billion Telesat deal mentioned today. All these blunders have a few things in common. They all have the fingerprints of this Prime Minister. They all involve the misuse of taxpayers' dollars. They all involve the Liberal negligence. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are worse off for each and every scandal the Liberals have created. This Prime Minister has led to incredible damage inflicted on Canadians' well-being. Billions of Canadians' tax dollars are being mismanaged by this Liberal government and in some cases going directly to the funds with no real commitment to get results for Canadians who foot the bill. And then, coincidentally, the same funds find their way into the pockets of Liberal insiders. It has become clear that instead of working to ensure Canadians have affordable food to eat, Liberals are focused on ensuring that Liberals can fill their bank accounts. Instead of building enough affordable homes for Canadians to live in, Liberals choose to build a bureaucracy of red tape. Canadians deserve a government that can benefit them, not just the Liberal elite. I hope the Liberals can end the cover-up, hand over the documents, so we can expose to Canadians just how deep their corruption runs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.